Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, you'll see part 2 of my interview with Shirk talking about the map design for Dead Matter. If you haven't seen the first part as of yet, you can find that on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching guys, and enjoy the video. If you have any questions for my next interview, I'd love to hear some of those in the comments. We'll be interviewing the lead developer, Nick Z, so I'd really like to take some of your questions to him if you have anything. It's interesting that we were talking about some of those ambient situations, ambient places where music is going to come into play. Now, I've been told by a certain little bird that you've also worked on the ambient music for the game. Is that right?
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't worked on any proper ambient music yet. A lot of the stuff I've been making is just me kind of fooling around, kind of getting comfortable with doing stuff like this on the computer, because I play instruments, like I play piano and guitar and whatnot, but those are physical instruments, and then when you go to play it on a computer, it's quite a bit different. So just me getting comfortable and trying to find like a style that I enjoy and find good references. And so yeah, like there's been a few things that I posted in the community Discord where it was just some ambient sounds and whatnot, to kind of give people an idea of like, okay, it's going to sound something like this, but hopefully a lot more refined, higher quality when it actually comes time for me to make the stuff. And the ambient music itself, it's hard to say. Like, it's not music, it's
Sound.
Yeah, it's ambience of the world, but it's not just like birds chirping and stuff like that. Like it's drones and swells and stuff like that to really give off a mood, right? Whether that's like a melancholy mood or whatnot, it just it really helps like solidify what you should kind of be feeling in the world, like whether it's dreary or if it's happy, or if it's a thunderstorm and it's pouring out, maybe there's some, you know, sad music or maybe angry music or something like that.
Yeah,
and it's more or less just to kind of tie everything in thematically to the world.
Yeah, it comes down to that immersion again, right? Like that's
Exactly.
That's a big part of it. Now,
ambient music is huge when it comes to immersing somebody. Even it doesn't have to be quiet, or it doesn't have to be loud. It's just quiet and subtle. But if it's there, it can really trigger a mood in somebody, and that mood can really help immerse somebody.
Absolutely. And I think this was something that I was going to touch on as well, was the fact that it doesn't seem like you shy away from a challenge as a developer. Not only have you been working on this ambient sound, ambient music, but you worked on the SkyDome too, which was originally outside of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah, hugely outside of my comfort zone. The sky itself was it's done in two parts. It's done in a shader, so a material in the Unreal Engine, and then a blueprint component, which is essentially like the programming that controls all the behavior of it, right? So the lighting and stuff like that. And the blueprint part, funny enough, which I didn't have really any input in this new sky, Johnny actually did that, was where I was more comfortable making a sky, right? Like I was more comfortable with setting up a sky, like the all the lighting and stuff like that. But the material aspect, the shader aspect, I'm not good with materials. That takes like a specific skill that I just don't really have in order to do. And I've tried doing a sky in the past when we first had to replace our old sky, and I couldn't do it. And I told Johnny that, like, hey, I can't, I tried doing a sky, like I can't really do this. We have to get somebody else to do it, right? Because our old sky that we had for the longest time, you see it in every piece of media, all the dev logs. It's essentially just a blue sky. Like it does have like a day-night cycle, but for instance, the night didn't have any light at night. It had a moon, but there's no actual light, so it was just completely black. And we had a gameplay snippet at the end of one of the vlogs, like vlog 5 or something like that, where it was I think it was foggy outside and it was completely black at night, and people were wondering, is it going to be this black at night? And it's not, unless it's there's no moon out. But it's just because there is no light, right? And some people have concerns about that. And so we really had to get this sky working, especially nighttime, because, well, you can't have a world time of day without actually having a proper working sky.
Yeah.
And the old sky that we had, it just, unfortunately, it was never finished by the previous developer that was on the team, and it was left in a state that was very difficult to salvage. So we had to kind of just, again, cut our losses with that, and then start brand new. And so this sky, I'm still working on it right now. Actually, I'm just about finished. Like, I'll probably get finished in the next day or so, to a state where we can completely use it for everything we need to. But it's taken me, I don't know, like over a month and a half, maybe like 5-6 weeks or something like that. And it's taken me a lot longer than I thought it would have, because I had no idea what I was doing. And I still don't really feel like I know what I'm doing. It's just been a lot of like, let me throw this at the wall and see if it sticks, right? And fortunately it has, and like the sky actually looks pretty good and it functions very well.
Yeah, I saw some of so if you guys don't know, Shirk also streams his development work occasionally on Twitch, much like the rest of the dev team. And I saw some of that whilst you were working on it, and it looked fantastic. It was like I remember seeing like the late evening setting, and you did mention that the shading I don't think was in at that stage. Like, there was no shading to it. It was just the sky itself.
Yeah, there's no lighting.
But it looked awesome. Like, I think that's really gonna, like, once you get everything in there and you tie it all in together, I think that's really gonna help set that, like we've talked about, that mood and the immersion as well.
It's funny because again, like, me working on the sky right now, like a month and a half straight, like that directly takes away from me working on the world, right? Because I'm the only environmental artist that's working on the world, placing all the buildings, making all the houses and stuff. So this directly takes time away from that. But this is such an essential thing that it's like we have really no option besides doing this right now. And the sky itself, though, people in the Discord had concerns that I was working on for so long, and they're just like, oh, it's just the sky, right? It's just the sky, like nobody's gonna look at it. But then if you think about it, the sky is from the horizon and up. It's literally like 50% of your screen whenever you're outside. Like, you can't help but look at the sky when you're outside. It's the background for the world, right?
Yeah, and I mean, not just that as well, like you say, it's the lighting behind it as well. Like, it's not just the sky, you're also setting the lighting for all of the surroundings that you are going to be looking at.
Yeah, exactly. It's a huge component, and like it makes a huge difference. Like, I posted some photos, I think I posted in the backer sneak peek or backer general, and I just showed some before and after photos of like the same area, one with the new sky and one with the old sky, and the difference was huge. Like, when I added the clouds in, like, it really pulled the environment together.
That's awesome.
So a lot of people might not realize how important the sky is, right? Because again, I don't want to name drop, but there's some other survival games that their skies are pretty mediocre, right? And you don't really care about it in those games, right? But if it was done so much better, you would probably note it, and you'd probably enjoy it because it makes everything else look that much better.
Absolutely.
When it's 50% of your screen, if it's just white, like it doesn't look that good.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree with you more. So going from something that you know is outside your comfort zone and that you've worked very hard on, to something that you're very proud of. If you had to pick something that you've been working on that you're most proud of so far, what would that be?
Would you be mad if I said the sky?
No, absolutely not. I mean, if that was like something that you've learned, as you go, I completely understand.
Yeah, I mean, it's so like I didn't have any confidence going into making the sky, right? It was just kind of fooling around. There's definitely many times where I've actually scrapped the entire sky and like tried starting again because couldn't figure out how to do something. But then I kind of just stuck with it, took a break, came back, and like figured it out or figured a different way to do it. And so there's a lot of work that's gone into this sky, and you know, I'd be lying if I said it was enjoyable. Like, I hated doing this sky for a lot of the time. Some of it's completely fine, like it's enjoyable, but a lot of other stuff, it's like I don't know what's going on, and it's literally just guessing and trying to Google issues that other people just either have never run into, or they've never gone in depth with the sky or something like that, and you know, just things I couldn't figure out online, and it gets very frustrating. And that's actually why I haven't been streaming it all lately, is because the sky it's very frustrating to try to work on it, and it makes me anxious when I have people watching me struggle to make the sky.
Yes.
So
yeah.
there's a few times where I just rage quit out of my stream. I'm like, I cannot stream while people are watching me. So I just stopped streaming for like the last month, you know, while I work on the sky. But I'm pretty confident that this is going to be one of the best skies in a game in general, but definitely one of the best skies in an indie game. And I don't want to sound like I'm full of myself, but like it definitely, it's pretty accurate with everything. Like the sun positioning, it's mathematically accurate. The moon positioning is accurate. There's moon phases that actually affect illumination of the moon. So beginning of the month to the end of the month, you'll have all your moon phases. And so you'll have some days that are with no moon, so the night is completely black, and then you'll have other days where the moon is full moon, so it's bright at night. And then you have days in between, so it's kind of interpolates between them. And a lot of other games don't do that. A lot of other games don't have moon phase, right? A lot of other moons don't have, or other games don't have like physically accurate moon and sun position. Both of our moon and sun can be in the sky together, and technically there's the ability for the moon to eclipse the sun, right? So you can have a solar eclipse. It's that accurate. I don't think we'll ever have that in Dead Matter, but like that shows that like what's gone into it, and all of that math that's gone into like the actual positioning. That's thanks to Johnny. Johnny kind of like, I don't know, slaved away at it for like a weekend or something like that, and was able to get me all this data that I needed, based off of like, I don't know what kind of library he's using, but it's all physically accurate.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's you know, some creative liberties had to be taken with the sky. Like, it's not physically accurate in every aspect, but it looks good in most scenarios, and that's what's important. And there's control there for different weather transitions too, because some games, again, I'm not going to name drop, they don't have weather transitions. It will just be middle of summer, and then all of a sudden it will, within like 2 frames, it gets foggy, and then there's snow on the ground. It doesn't really look that good. But we have a nice smooth transition from clear sky to overcast, and all that.
That's really cool. That's really interesting to learn about. I had no idea that it was so in depth, so I can absolutely understand why you're so proud of it if it was outside of your comfort zone and it's come to something that you think is going to be so interesting in the game. So you guys are watching this video, and you know, we're looking at closed alpha time, for example. Maybe you're playing the closed alpha as you're watching this or something like that. Appreciate the sky, because Shirk worked hard.
A really cool thing with it, because I was just working on some stuff today, but I added Polaris in, so the Northern Star, so you can use that to navigate. I added the Milky Way rotation. I don't know if the constellations are actually accurate. Well, they are, but I don't know about their actual rotations. But that doesn't really matter, because you're just going to be using Polaris to navigate if you want to at night. But when it comes to the phases, for example, a really cool gameplay implication of that is you can actually just go online and figure out the moon phases for a very specific date, right? So say September 18th, 2024, right? Or September 22nd, 2024. You can figure out what the moon phase is of that night, and then you can kind of plan, if you want to do like a night raid or something like that, you can choose whether you want to do it when it's going to be bright at night or when it's going to be pitch black. And you can actually, if you figure out the moon phase is just by Googling that date, you can kind of plan around the nighttime, whether it's gonna be bright or not. And it's, to me, that's a really cool gameplay implication.
Wow.
People can
Yeah.
plan in the future for, hey, on the 15th, we're gonna go do this, break into this place because there's gonna be no light. It's gonna be very easy to hide, right?
Wow. Yeah, that's really, really in depth. I mean, we, like you say, that opens up a world of possibilities. Like, we might want to consider going on a well lit night, for example, where we're going to be able to see, I don't know, let's for example, exterior guards. Or we might want to go on an incredibly dark night so that we can get as close as possible.
Exactly.
So that's really interesting that that's actually going to come into play. I really like that. That's and it just shows those small details that you guys are actually considering.
Yeah, it's one of those, the depth that we want to take with the game, right? Like, it's one of those optional features too. It's not like it changes gameplay drastically, where it's like if you don't care about it, it's going to ruin your experience, right? It's not a gameplay feature like that. So it's people who want to take advantage of it, they'll really enjoy having that feature.
Absolutely. Fully agree with you. So, kind of moving on from that aspect of things, and these are kind of like my final couple of questions I'd like to wrap it up with. And I understand that you might not know too much about this, but I understand also that there's a lot of people asking right now about optimization settings, things like that, and understandably so, because I'm sure we've all played games in the past that have come into early access, and there's a whole lot of people that can't play them, or at least not at a solid frame rate that perhaps we would like. So how important is optimization for you and the team with regards to the map?
It's very important. Like, every step of the way, whether it's me doing the map or it's in programming, there's always the consideration for optimization, right? We don't just implement something without the thought of how it's going to impact performance. So I said it a while ago with this sky, for example. This sky is actually, it's very cheap in terms of performance, because just the way everything's done, like, there's not a lot of dynamic stuff which can kind of bog down performance. And for instance, with DayZ, they had a sky system called True Sky at one point, right? And apparently a bunch of people complained about the performance of that sky, right? Because I don't know the whole story behind it, but it affected performance in the game, and a lot of people complained about it. And I don't know the devs' point of view, but that's kind of, visuals over performance, kind of like that choice. And we don't want to make a choice of like, okay, visuals over performance. We kind of want to make a balance between everything, right? We want everything to not look like shit. We want it to look good, but we don't want it to perform bad, right? So there's always the balance of making it perform well and look good enough.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to the world and everything,
summing it up.
Sorry?
I said, I think that's a really good way of summing it up, that you guys are looking at this balance. And I think that's really important for a lot of people, because, naturally not everybody can run on these high-end high-end rigs. There's
other considerations that we have. So when you have a PvP game, for example, like PUBG, or even Counter-Strike, it's well known that people turn down their settings to get a competitive advantage, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't limit the lowest setting all the time be high, because then people with low-end hardware won't be able to play, right? So
absolutely,
for us, we have to kind of also make a decision with a few things. Like, we have a lighting feature in Unreal that's called Distance Field Ambient Occlusion. And we use that with all our meshes for buildings and trees and whatnot. And it basically gives like an ambient shadowing to objects. So inside buildings will actually be dark in the middle of the day, right? Whereas like if you're outside under a deck or something, you'll still have a lot of like ambient light leaking in. So it'll still be bright. But in the basement, for example, it might be pitch black because there's no ambient lighting. And that has gameplay implications, right? So what we have to do, unfortunately, is we have to force that to be on for every single, user, for every piece of hardware. And because if you remove that, then people who have lower end hardware, people who turn that setting off, will have a huge advantage, because now people can't hide in shadowed areas during the day.
Absolutely.
So when it comes to stuff like that, it's like there's unfortunately no solution for it, right? There's always going to be like the goalpost for the minimum hardware is always going to have to move forward, right? Like you can't reasonably expect to be playing a new game on 8-year-old hardware, right? Like you have to upgrade eventually.
No, absolutely.
So when it comes to Dead Matter, like graphics card wise, we're focusing on GTX 10 series performance. So like a 1050 Ti is kind of like the low end of what we're optimizing for, and then everything above that should be good performance wise. But if you have like a much older card that's from like 2012 or something, you might be headed loud.
Okay, so if anybody is watching this video right now, consider your build currently, and perhaps take that into consideration.
We might
just something. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was gonna say we might allow because we have the different game modes. We have single player, co-op, and then multiplayer. We may allow settings to be changed on like single player and co-op, for instance. So if you're playing single player, you may be able to turn down the settings quite a bit more than something on multiplayer.
Right, okay.
Because you're not going to get a competitive advantage against anybody else.
Yeah, that's definitely a nice tweak to consider. I mean, even for somebody that's perhaps looking at upgrading and can't get the most out of their online play, later down the line, at least they could play solo, like you say.
Exactly.
I think one of the biggest aspects of a lot of games, like I seem to remember, and I can't say if this is correct or not because it's been years, but I seem to remember we were talking about the War Z earlier. A huge problem that the War Z had was over long distances, there was no foliage. There was no bushes. There was no nothing like that. So you could be hidden in a bush somewhere on like the edge of let's say that like on the edge of a slope or an incline, looking down into a town, and the people coming in from the other side of town could see you clear as day.
There's a lot of...
So is that something you're looking to consider?
So yeah, there's a lot of technical stuff that comes into play with something like that. Like for grass, for example, right? Like grass, you can't have it render for an infinite distance, right? It becomes too expensive, and there's a lot of issues that come with it. So you have to do something with the grass at a distance. In the Arma games, I believe, what they end up doing is they have like the grass mesh, that you can crawl around in front of the player, but then at a distance, like a far distance, they have like a second terrain that's like almost raises up. So that like kind of hide a player. And that's a really cool solution, but it's also a very difficult solution to balance, because like what happens if you do see a player but now they're hidden in the grass, but you know exactly where they are, but now like you should be able to see them some. And there's no actual solution for any of it besides just having, if you could, infinite draw distance for grass, right? So there's not a whole lot we can do with that, unfortunately. We do have like the grass does draw out at a pretty far distance, and it kind of fades out. There's a lot of objects in the way, like trees and whatnot. So it's not like you'll be able to see for kilometers straight through a field or something. There'll always be kind of maybe a hill in the way or something else.
So we're almost looking at reducing the possibility of that happening by the terrain and the setting itself, almost.
Just something in the way. Like it's not really something that we can solve, unfortunately. It's just like what can you do to disguise the issue, or just kind of band-aid fix it with something else.
Absolutely. I think that's more than fair. And with regards to we were talking about, like, for example, like settings and making sure that some of them can't be changed. Do you think that the foliage is likely to have some sort of, I guess, baseline, so that people aren't just going to be able to
Yeah.
whack it on the lowest setting, and then they've got an advantage because they can see someone.
Yeah, so the way the grass actually works in Unreal, fortunately, it's actually a pretty good way that it works, is it has, so the trees won't trees will be the same pretty much regardless for everybody, right? They'll render at the same distance stuff, but the grass is what's really expensive generally in games. So the way Unreal does it, which is, like I was saying, it's actually pretty nice, is it uses a density scaling factor, essentially. So instead of just having it so the grass renders out at a shorter distance, right? So say like 10 meters away, the grass just stops. Instead of that happening, the density, you can just decrease the density. So if you have 100% coverage foliage and you have a low end PC, you could set it to like say 20%. The grass will still load in at the same distances, but you'll get less pieces of grass, right? So
Absolutely.
What we have to do on our end is basically balance it out so the lowest density that somebody could set to is still dense enough that people could hide in it, but it drastically increases performance for lower end systems. And it's
awesome.
Not a very difficult thing for us to set up, fortunately, while still retaining that like visual fidelity of having grass on the landscape.
Okay, cool. That was about everything that I wanted to ask you about. And I think for me, this was really enlightening, especially because I'll be the first to admit, I don't have like an in-depth understanding of Unreal Engine and, all of the stuff that goes into making the map itself. So it's really interesting for me, especially like looking into this. So thank you very much for sitting through all these questions and taking the time